Yay! I love when it works. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Oh my gosh. This is like one of my favorite things to do is interview someone I've gotten to know and I only want to get to know better. Interviewing people has just been a great way to learn more about the people that I think I already know. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to this week's guest. Today's guest helps adults transform their lives, be more creative, and regain joy with purposeful play. He's the founder of Breakthrough Play, a corporate facilitator, keynote speaker, certified coach, and author of the book Playful Rebellion: Maximize Workplace Success Through the Power of Play. Featured as one of the top 100 HR influencers of 2021 by the Engagedly HR software platform, he has over 14 years of experience in the corporate world, well as nearly a decade of experience as a performer in improv theater. He uses the power of applied improvisation and other playful methods to assist people in unlocking creativity, confidence, and better communication. Please join me in welcoming Gary Ware. Welcome, Gary.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Gary, thanks so much for joining us from your place in San Diego, California. It's a thrill. You and I have gotten to know each other on a regular basis. We've been meeting up for months now, but I feel like I'm going to learn a few things about you on this call. So, there's a show at Building Strong Networks, and the context is leadership. So tell me, how do you define leadership, and when did you realize you had the skills to lead?
Yeah. For me, the definition of leadership is being a person that can take care of the people in their care by being a great listener, being inclusive, and at the end of the day, championing them. So that's what I think a great leader is. And uh, it's funny, when I was younger, I got in trouble for this, but now that I'm older, I realize that these are the qualities of good leadership. I was that person that would get everyone together and we would essentially cause mischief. I thought we were just having fun. And the teacher would say, "No, Gary, stop that. You're interfering with class." Like, for example, I created a little study group mastermind in the middle of class when I guess we were supposed to be solo working. But I thought it would be great. "Hey, why don't we work together? What are you doing? What are you doing?" And the teacher was not having it at all. But people followed me, and I thought we were taking care of each other and stuff like that. And so those were the things I got in trouble for. But as I'm older and more mature, I realized some of those characteristics are in great leadership.
I love it. Listening, including people, and championing people is because there's great core elements of leadership. And you're right, there's examples of like you wanting to bring people together, support each other, even though at the moment it was like making the teacher you know it's like it wasn't her plan. She's like, it's funny,
Agreed.
I interviewed your friend Jeff Harry and the title of the show ended up being Good Mischief. So I'm not surprised the two of you have the play and improv sort of background. So having that in your childhood, I'm actually kind of curious, like what were you like as a kid? In the playground. What's the earlier Gary like? Were you always organizing friends to get together? Were you sort of sitting back and watching? Like, what were you like on the playground?
Yeah, I was that mischievous kid that just wanted to be involved. I wanted to have fun. I was considered the class clown. And I think, and it was funny because it was after years of therapy and looking back, it was more of a survival mechanism because my dad was in the Navy. We moved a lot, so I was going from school to school up into fourth grade. I was at a different school, so I got really good at knowing. All right, cool. What do I need to know? Who do I need to know to, to fit in, to belong? And I was often, people say, "Wow, you can fit in with so many different groups. You're like this chameleon." And it wasn't until like years later where I realized, like, who am I? Am I really being my true self? Uh, However, now that I look at like the essence of it, the innocence of it, of being a kid, it was just all about just wanting to have fun, wanting to, have friends and get along.
Yeah, it is sort of a double-edged piece, right? Where you are at the core a fun person, but when you're performing it, because that's how it helps people get along with you, it is always a question of whether it is truly you or are you doing this in a performance way, and it's sort of a little bit of both. Like it is a survival mechanism. Um, and I get that chameleon piece too, by the way, Gary. Like I had friends in all the different cliques, and I went to a school that graduated 1,300 students in one
Wow.
graduating class, so it was very big. So we had all these cliques, and I had sort of friends in all of them, and I sort of floated around and thought at the time, wow, I've sort of fit everywhere. And then I had this moment of like, but none of them are all me. Like, like I'm able to fit in all these places, like, but none of them are just all me. And it's like that trying to figure out like where we belong. But it sounds like you moved a lot before fourth grade, but then did things stabilize after that
They
point?
did. Yeah, they did. But those characteristics were still there of wanting to just engage people. I love making people laugh, making people smile. I love practical jokes and things of that nature. And similar to you, I was like that multi-potentialite of like, ooh, I want to try this. This sounds fun. Oh, so I was in band, but I also did soccer. I did football. And I think it was like, I like to say I peaked my sophomore year in high school because I was, if you look through that yearbook, I was like in every club. I was in track. I was in band. I was the vice president of the African American Student Union. I did all these things, and then after that, I think I experienced like school burnout. And then like my junior or senior year, I was like, I'm just gonna cut back on that. But it wasn't like if I was truly being honest with myself, I was like really curious about those things and wanted
Yeah.
to do it. I didn't realize that, oh, there's a capacity that we can do things well. And then, my junior year, I got a little bit smarter and I cut back on some of those things. And then I was
Where
like, all
where
right,
was it you were growing up at that point?
San Diego.
Oh, so where you are now. That's great. So
Yeah.
so you ended up in San Diego, naval town. That makes sense. So when you were like 12, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up? Was there a plan based on your family? Like, was there definitely going to be college, or you had like a family business to join, or like what was life?
Yeah. No family business. When I was 12, uh, I wanted to be a scientist.
Ooh.
I don't know where that came from, but I thought that was cool. My parents were like, all right, cool. You want to be a scientist? All right, cool. So they got me like things like chemistry sets. I had a telescope. And by 12, I was playing the clarinet. And so that was something that I really enjoyed doing. And then so my dad was in the Navy, and I was considering, like, I don't know how these two would mix, but I really like science and exploration. But I was like, oh, yeah, I want to go. I want to go into the Navy. I want to be an officer there. I want to go to to the Naval Academy. And then that sort of floated away. Like once I got into high school, if I was really honest, once I got my first girlfriend, then it was just like, what? What do I want? I want to be with you. I
You're the first guest to say that, and it's so true and so honest for like those years, those like teenage years. You're like,
yeah.
I don't want to go anywhere but here. Like, why would I go anywhere but here? Because here is where you are. All right. So now you're ending high school. What's the plan? You
Yeah,
weren't
it's
you,
so
you didn't go to the Navy. It
no, I
sounds
didn't.
you didn't go
And
to the Navy.
I missed a bunch of big checkpoints. So if you want to go to um, the Naval Academy, you have to get lots of recommendations
Mhm.
from your local congressperson, people at your school, and things like that. And so I had the grades. I just didn't. I missed all these checkpoints. But I had music, and so I'm like, all right, I'm going to go. I'm going to go to school to be a music teacher because that's where I fell in love with music. It was like that
Mhm.
sort of Mr. Holland's Opus situation where our high school music teacher, he was like teacher of the year and all these things. And so I fell in love with music. I ended up being the drum major. And if you're not familiar with that, that's the person that like is in the parades that has the big baton and stuff like that. Um, and so, yeah, I got into San Diego State to their music education program. And then things changed only because the end goal, like my end goal was like, oh, get a good, get a degree because my parents were all about education. Like, hey, you can do whatever you want, just get a good education, so you can get a good job and pay off the student loans and stuff like that. And then someone put a bug in my ear that changed everything. They were like, you want to go to school for music education? All right, how much are you getting in student loans? Are you sure you're going to be able to get a job as a music teacher? at the high school level like you want it to, so you can be that Mr. Holland's Opus. And I started to doubt myself as a like 18 and a half, 19-year-old of like, I don't know. Maybe I can't do that. And then I justified it as like, well, the logical thing is I probably should do something that's gonna help me make money. My parents weren't well off, but we never like I never felt like we were poor, but I wanted to be better. That was the thing. And so I changed my major. My parents freaked out, of course.
Yeah.
So I went from music education to computer science.
Had
And
had you had any interest in computer science up to that point?
no,
What,
no
okay,
interest.
what year is this?
This is in 99.
In 99. So it's like,
Ni-
okay, so 99 is when I was learning how to do HTML for the first time when I was supposed to be getting my graduate degree.
so that was
Websites
it.
were just starting to happen. GeoCities was a
Yes.
thing. Okay, so computer science is like, we're not quite in the world of the websites yet, but like we're starting to play in that space. So yeah,
Exactly.
okay, you can make
They didn't
money.
have the program that I wanted. So I was in a ska band back then.
You were in
And
a ska band?
I had blonde hair like Cisco, at least the dragon.
Hot. All
Uh,
right, Gary. Go
I
ahead.
played saxophone in a ska band,
Yep.
but I loved that I was doing our websites. I was learning HTML, and we didn't at San Diego State. They didn't at the time didn't have a program for that. The equivalent was computer science because you would learn programming and stuff like that. And so I switched to my major, but I had pretty much just did gen ed and stuff like that, so it wasn't going to necessarily set me back. But I didn't like all the programming. I just wanted to, how do I make better websites and how do I get this stuff on my website so I can sell our CD? And so
Right.
that's when I switched and I transferred to the Art Institute in Santa Monica.
That sounds like a big shift.
Big shift. Again, this is by now it's mid 2000. So Y2K has happened. And
Or didn't.
this was or didn't. Yeah, right.
The world was ending. Oh wait, we're still
Yeah,
here.
yeah, but at the time, my band we had broken up. Like all bands break
Mm.
up is over girls and stuff like that. So I didn't have any attachments to San Diego, and I really loved design. I really loved all of that, figuring that out. It was my like sort of hyper focus, and they had a program. It was called multimedia web design. That was the program. It was a Bachelor of Science in that. And I, got accepted, got in. And for the first time, so up until this point, I really didn't like school. Like it was a necessary evil. Like I did pretty well, but it wasn't like I enjoyed it. Like, so at this point, I was like hooked. Like
Yeah.
every class was a project. We were making videos. And all this stuff was like pre-YouTube, pre anything that was easy to create content. So I
Right.
spent hours in the lab, like getting things off of tape onto a computer, and then hours getting it off of a computer back onto tape. But I learned how to do all this stuff for web that's completely obsolete now. If I'm being honest, like everything is obsolete. But what I did learn is how to be agile. I was like, the first adapting like to like Google Ads. I understand what that was. I knew what banners were. And so after I graduated, I ended up getting a job at a cable company, and I encoded commercials. So basically I took commercials off of tape and digitized them for like $18 an hour at a cable company in Los Angeles.
I mean, that's $36,000 a year, which, unless you had school loans that were like for, law school, that's not a bad start, I guess, out of
Not bad,
school. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not bad.
And
And it was
doing something that was easy, something you liked, and left you probably brain space to think about other things. What were you thinking
that's it.
about?
Yeah. So I got my best friend from college a job there as well, and we had all this equipment. It didn't pan out the way we wanted it, but we wanted to create a multimedia magazine for car culture, like drifting and things like that. We called it Street Fame, and so we went and used equipment for the company that we work for to go and film if you like Fast and the Furious type stuff was like big back then. We would go film stuff like that. We would film like car models and stuff, and we were trying to put together like an easing, that had video, that had articles and stuff like that. Again, pre YouTube. Well, YouTube was just starting out and stuff like that. It was very hard to get it off the ground. And then I was still like sort of into music, so I wanted to include music. So it was just fun. It was so much fun. Again, no pressure. Most of that stuff just bombed completely, but we didn't
What's
care.
great is that you learn so much. I mean, like, the practicality of this isn't that you got to sell it or even finish things, but that in the doing, you started to trust yourself and test things out and try things that most people didn't
Yeah.
even know existed. So while you were trying to figure out something that was not easy to do, then when tools came along that made it easier to host video and embed audio, like, you already had a lot of the skills, and it was a matter of now using some of these new tools. So, I mean, it sounds like a playground in a lot of ways. Like,
It
it was that,
was.
like, what do they say? Sandbox. It was it
Yeah.
was a sandbox for you to play in.
It was a sandbox, and it was one of those things where uh with the schooling that I had, it essentially taught me how to be creative, how to learn, how to figure things out. And I took on things that now that I look back, I'm like, wow, I was out of my league. I ended up doing like commercials, and they were pretty good commercials. Like for people in the area, like I made commercials and sold them and made these websites. And it's so funny. Like again, when you have that, when you're playing, it's in a sandbox and it's just like really fun. I spent, again, this is before I got married, before I had kids, so I had a lot of time on my hands, where I would just spend hours just like, I need to figure out how to make this into a commercial. Like I knew how to film it, I knew how to digitize it, but like I taught myself After Effects, like to put like graphics and stuff on there. And then because I was in the commercial, like I digitized commercials, I was able to talk with the salespeople to get the people a deal. I'm like, hey, they're a local salesperson. Can how can we get this on the air and get them a good deal and stuff like that? So all these things, again, was fun. I learned about digital marketing because I was the quote unquote web guy. So the cable companies sort of saw that web is where it was going. They were sort of dragging their feet, so they didn't really have a good sort of approach to it. So they let a like 24, 25-year-old like create banners for these large companies and stuff, which is great. I totally took it on. I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to make banners. And I learned how it worked. It was just play.
How did you not end up in, like, ad agencies or digital marketing agency? How did not, like, it sounded like you were sort of
Oh,
on that path where you were learning the marketing of it, you understood the tech of
mm.
it. Like, you could have
Yeah,
easily been swept up into that whole path.
it could have. So one thing I left out, I did intern at a large ad agency in LA, Deutsch. Um, and it was one of those things where they weren't hiring after I graduated. It was one of those. So they're the company. I don't know if anyone remembers Mitsubishi, the car company. They did a Super Bowl ad where the Mitsubishi Eclipse was racing another car, and they were throwing bowling balls at the cars, and it was sort of testing their stamina and endurance and stuff like that. And then one of the first commercials that I remember that had a website call to action where it was seewhathappens.com. So you don't know, is the bowling ball going to crash into the car? Have no idea. It was a like sort of like one of those and go to this website. And so I was interning there. They lost some big accounts, so I ended up not getting picked up. So that's where I got the cable job. But it was one of those things in LA, very cutthroat, very hard to it was like just like the Mad Men, Madison Avenue, New York. Who do you know? And I didn't necessarily know anyone. So again, the networking thing came into play when we moved back to San Diego, where me and my wife got married. And then I got hired as a web manager for a data storage company. So again, another sandbox. I did everything for them. And if I'm being completely honest, in the interview, I was sort of saying that I could do stuff that I didn't know how to completely do. But I knew what they were. And the main thing where I felt confident that I can end up doing it was the people who interviewed me had no idea what it was either. They were like, it was basically We need some people who can do these things. We don't really know what they are. You went to design school and you know web stuff, so you should be able to know this. I knew about maybe 80% of the stuff that I needed to do. And again, the other 20% I learned, but I quickly learned how to network and figure out who did know how to do it. And I learned from them really quickly because at the end of the day, I I knew that I was in over my head, but I didn't want it to be a situation where my reputation was at stake.
That makes sense. How did you find those people that were helping you?
Um, so again, the internet is starting to be like, so at this point now we're 2006, 2007. And it was just basically I think it was MySpace and Facebook and stuff like that. There were in San Diego, there is an advertising community, American Advertising Federation, and they had a young professionals network. It was called Ad2, and it was funny. It was a sports marketing night, and they said you can get a discount off your ticket if you're a member. So I became a member to get a discount. Uh, a typical thing when you have organizations like that. And I went there, and then in networking, I found out there were it validated that I actually knew more than I thought I did, because I ended up meeting some people who worked at a digital marketing agency that I ended up working at eventually, but they were working on ads for my competitor, the competitor for the company that I was working for. And we were just sort of talking shop. And I realized, I'm like, I do know what I'm talking about. And they're not doing a good job. And their client spends way more money than we spend. So anyway, so it was a big confidence boost. But those little communities, again, they were like little web communities that were like forums and stuff like that I was a part
Yeah.
of. And that's, again, I would ask questions. Again, it was all play for me. I saw it as I talk about like a playground of possibilities where I just see people as playmates. So I would super curious about it, and I would just ask questions, and then the interesting thing is, because everything was so new, most other people, they were just figuring it out too.
Yeah. I mean, it was new for everyone. So if you were just a little ahead, this is sort of reminds me of the beginning of the pandemic when I started playing with Zoom, and a month later announced that I was running a 4-week program for $500, and people were like, sign me up. Like, something I don't know. And it's like,
Yes.
yeah, I have 1 month's extra education on you, but like the number of hours that you're willing to put in and try things, right? Test things out and very quickly excel. So it's just so curious, because you sound like you're on this sort of, I don't know, we say like career trajectory around like working, one agency, maybe moving to another agency. But I know you as an entrepreneur. I particularly know you as someone who's like doing tons of improv, play and speaking professionally. At what point do you start getting connected into the improv community? Is that sort of a side thing that happens when you're back in San Diego?
Yeah. So I'm in San Diego. At this point, um, I get hired at that agency I tell you about. I quickly moved up the ranks of that agency. One, because I was willing to like sort of put in the extra work to learn things. And all the stuff that I learned in school was finally coming to play. Everything was just sort of snapping into place. And I find myself as a director. So now I have a staff of about 26 people. And again, my end goals was to get a good job, get degree, all that stuff. So I'm like, hey, I'm doing all the things I went to school for, but I'm miserable.
You're
I
not even
am
30, right? Like
No, I'm
you're
not even 30 at this point.
you're not even
I'm
30.
almost there.
You're almost
Yeah.
30. You got 26 people reporting to you, and it's not what you want to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm burning myself out because, and then now the play is gone. The play disappeared. It was work. So I went from seeing the world as a playground to seeing the world as a proving ground, where I'm like, I need to prove that I'm good enough. And I was in this mode of optimization. I'm like one of those forever students. I always wanted to learn. And so I'm like, all right, the environment that I'm in now, I need to do a lot of public speaking. I need to, know how to work the room. I need to speak to clients, all of these things. I'm really good at my job. I need some schooling. I need to, how do I level up this? And so I found a mentor. I've just found, again, someone that I respected. And at the time, he was the CEO of the digital marketing agency that I worked for, and then he got bought out, and so he was just sort of like floating around. And so, I asked him. I said, what should I do? At first, he said Toastmasters. I hated it. I
Mm.
It was great. It was a great stepping stone, but it wasn't my jam. But then the next thing was like, oh, try improv, and that was it for me. It was funny. I went to improv to get better at public speaking, but what I discovered there was that I hadn't been playing, and it became the sandbox again, the playground again, and it became another deep focus, just like how it was in school. So I wanted to know everything about improv, and I wanted to perform it too, because again, as I told you, I used to be in a band. I had since given that up, just being an adult and stuff like that, and not having time. And so this was going back to my performance roots. It was a lot of fun, but then I started bringing these improv games to my team, just as wanting to be a better leader. I'm like, this is great for me. I think my team would like this too. So we would play improv games on a Friday night, over some beers, in the conference room. We would do it before we had a big meeting as a way to like de-stress and get in the zone. And so we would do all these things. And I became known as the improv guy that, that knew how to do improv. And so at these marketing associations, I would do improv workshops. Just, it was my contribution. So I was getting good at facilitation, and I didn't know what I know now about the power of improv, of how it brings people together. But I think inherently I did know, because I kept doing it. But it was a hobby. It wasn't my main thing. And I thought, if we were playing The Sims and I would be on the marketing executive career path. And I thought the next thing would be to run my own agency. So I had moved from agency to agency, and I was at a cush job. I mean, I loved working there. I had another team. My bosses I admired, working on some awesome accounts. But then the opportunity came up where I would be a co-founder of a small digital marketing firm, and I took it. And I thought that's where my career would take me. I thought that was the next step. And I was like, oh, I can finally use all of this stuff in learning and development and growing teams on my own team, because that was my role as one of the co-founders, is growing the staff and keeping the staff healthy and whatnot, and client strategy. And so that only lasted 4 years.
But it sounds like what I want to go back to is that, because you went from sort of a playground to a proving ground, which is such a great visual, that the improv gave you that outlet again of just learning and playing, like, because it wasn't your job, because it was just a hobby. It was something you got to like just sort of geek out about, that it was fun again. You were learning, you're enjoying it, and you're able to then figure out how to take some of those skills and apply it to the day job that you had, which helped you stand out, which helped you have something to contribute, which gave you new opportunities to speak on a topic that you knew something about and felt passionate about. So it like almost brought joy back into your day job, right?
It did.
But at no point were you thinking, I'm going to make a living doing this. So it makes sense that you were on this. I mean, earlier I said, wait, aren't you going to be working at a marketing agency? Like, I'm like, clearly this is where you're going. But now you have that role 4 years in. You're at this, it sounds like you were at a startup. So that's just super stressful to be in charge. Like, that's something you don't know what it's like until you're doing it. What parts of that didn't you like? Like, why was that not fulfilling in the end?
Turns out my co-founder and the universe had different plans for me, because I thought that was it.
Yeah.
Because being our goal was, we wanted to stay small intentionally so that we can, we wanted it to be a lifestyle business where we made enough where everyone could be supported and we can do other things. That was the dream that I signed up for. And yes, we hit our fair share of challenges of payroll and clients and this, that, and the other. But it was always my thing of like, all right, cool. I love this because I'm really good at digital marketing and all this other stuff. And I can set aside time for that. I can do that. And I love this sort of improv thing, this play thing, and it was like my sort of side gig, but like who cares if I'm getting paid for it? It was a really fun hobby, and I was on a retreat that I was co-facilitating in Nicaragua in two or was it 2018? So my son was about to be one. It's my birthday week. We're in Nicaragua. I am like reflecting as the sun is going down on our last day. I'm like, I think I did it. I figured it out. Um, I have a job that affords me the ability to do amazing things like this. I loved it so much so that I got a tattoo uh, that says harmony. So years earlier, I got a tattoo on this arm that says chaos, and then I said, "Oh, I'm completing the cycle. I've gotten harmony." So I got a tattoo that evening or last evening there that says harmony, and I went home. And that Monday, my co-founder broke up with me and took the business and left.
Wow. Wow.
He said, I think we should go our separate ways.
You did not see
He
that coming. Right.
did not. And I should have, because he ran our other co-founder out 4 months before that. But I justified that and as a separate situation.
Mhm.
And it was one of those things. I came back. I thought it was a normal sort of check-in. He owns 90% of the business. I only own 10%. And he basically said, "Hey, I'm gonna buy you out, and you're gonna go do your own thing, and I'm gonna take the business and I'm leaving." And get this, 2 hours after that, our landlord calls and told me and my wife that we have to move because he's selling our house. We have a good 60 days before we have to be out.
That's your 2018. You have
Mhm.
a nearly 1-year-old. You're about to be evicted in 2 months to find a new place to live, and you no longer have the job that you love. So
And
much
my
so that
wife's not
you had
working
gotten a
either.
tattoo.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife's not working.
My wife's not
Uh,
working.
no.
Okay. So this thing you did on the side, does this become your job?
I
How
was
do you
hesitant.
turn that into something? Like,
So yeah.
how do you figure out what your new business is? I mean, you have all these skills. Did you wanna stay in the world of marketing? You had clearly skills, contacts, you could have, like, gotten a new portfolio.
I
Well,
could have.
yeah.
So one, there was some shame of like, I thought like, oh, I did the thing, and I was like, to go back, almost like my interpretation is like I'm going with my legs, my tail between my legs, like asking for my old job back and stuff like that, knowing that like I have a good reputation, stuff like that. People would gladly like, oh, Gary, like we got you, but there was something in me of like I failed. So there was that. And then on top of that, my wife saw better than I did. She saw the joy that I was having when I was doing these things, like teaching and facilitating. And I'm not even getting paid for this. And like I would come home and just like beaming joy and like there was something there. And so she was the one who really encouraged me. Like she's like, you should do this. Find out how to make this work, whatever this is. And so I'm also very grateful for my parents because we sold as much as we could and we moved in with my parents. They live in the neighborhood. We moved in with my parents, and I said, "All right, 2 years, I'm gonna figure this out." And because I had my network, so again, going back to networking, and what I ended up doing was I had about a 3 month window, like with my sort of severance buyout. Plus, we're at my parents, so we have even more time. I'm trying to figure out what this is, and so I was open and honest and like, hey, look, this is my, I reached out to the people that I knew in my network, and I said, hey, this is what I'm doing now. I'm figuring it out, and if here's how you can support me. One, can I do a complimentary? I called it complimentary recess. 45 minutes. I'll come to your office. I'll show you what I'm all about. You know, it's on me. First one's on me. And if you see a way for us to work together, let me know. At best, give me a recommendation. Write a review so I can include this in my package. And so quickly I was able to include some pretty big company names like in my portfolio of what I do now. And then they started referring me. And then I because I saw the marketing sort of association like as like my thing, I'm like, what else? Other like I know the power of having like a network like that. So I said, what else? What am I in? And I'm trying to figure out. And then someone said, oh, you're in learning and development. I'm like, oh, learning and development. Okay, cool. And so then and then of course, I had at this point had already learned about applied improvisation. So I had that network and stuff like that. But I went to the ATD conference, Association of Talent Development Conference. It happened to be in San Diego that year. So I got a membership so I can get a discount on the ticket. This one was a little bit more expensive than Add to San Diego, but I got the privilege of seeing people facilitate, and I learned a lot about what does it mean to be a true facilitator. Again, started making more people in my sort of network, and I saw other people doing similar stuff as me, and I said, all right, cool. All right, there are people that are doing experiential activities as a way to help people learn and grow. So it was very validating. And then on top of that, I got to see President Barack Obama give like an amazing fireside chat at that event, and it was awesome. And that was the catalyst for me to. I had a vision, and I knew all right, if I can continue to network and get referrals and then go to events and then demo at events, that's going to help me sort of start to build up this business.
And you were lucky because you had a bit of a runway.
I did.
I similarly, when I left my career in the end of 2014 to start my business, I got a lot of inquiries from people who saw that suddenly I was available, but it wasn't the work I wanted to be doing. And I went to my wife and I said, oh, I want to turn down this. And she says, yeah, that makes sense. And I went to her again that night and I was like, but there's this opportunity. And she's like, no, I know that makes sense. And then I went to her again the same night. I was like, she's not understanding. And she's like, are you asking permission to not make money right now? And I was like, yeah, I'm turning down money. She's like, I love you, but I don't need you. Like, I paid for this all before you came here. And I was like, thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay. And then that gave me the ability to be saying yes to things I truly wanted to do and explore and play and try. And, it took me a while to actually get serious enough about even making the money. Like I put all these non-monetary things up, like you said, like the free talks or writing the book, which, spent money on, like a podcast, but that's how you platform build. And it sounds like at some point you realize that you're also a professional speaker. Because I know through NSA, and I'm curious, getting sort of the ATD route makes sense, the L&D. When did you find NSA? And part two of that question is, how did 2020 impact your plans? Because it sounds like you had a 2-year plan to get this off the ground, and that was in 2018. So I'm just doing the math.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of curious.
Yes.
Answer whichever one makes sense.
Yeah. So as far as the public speaking, that was for my digital marketing days. I had been speaking on digital marketing topics, so I sort of got like an in that, where I just stopped accepting requests to speak about digital marketing, and then started saying, well, can I talk about tangentially how digital marketing can be affected by improv and stuff like that. But that's how I first got into it, and I'm very thankful for going way back when I was this web marketing manager for a data storage company. The company that I hired to help us with landing pages saw my potential as a speaker. They paid for me to speak at a conference put on by an organization called Marketing Sherpa, because they didn't want to do it and feel like that they are sort of platforming and selling. So they said, oh, we'll get one of our clients. He has an amazing story, amazing success. And then tangentially, we're involved. So they paid for all of that. They helped me put together the talk. And that was something where I'm like, this is a lot of fun. I like this. And again, why I wanted to get better at it. And that's which led me to Toastmasters and stuff like that. So I was at the point when I was a co-founder, I am speaking on a number of stages. It was just in digital marketing. And then when I was shifting, then the inquiry sort of went down a little bit, but I had those contacts and I would ask them. I said, "Hey, I have something that I think would be even more engaging than a typical talk on the future of this, that, and the other." And I'm very thankful for the people that took a chance that allowed me to really show myself. So that again is how I got into the speaking realm. And then because I started focusing on improvisation, I started saying, well, my talks are interactive talks. And then people are like, ooh, tell me about these interactive talks. So that was all part of my strategy. I will get as many talks as I can. They will be interactive. I can showcase what I do and then ask the question of like, wouldn't this be great to bring to your company? So that was my thing. Fast forward to 2020. I was like, 2020 is going to be my year. Ask Jeff Harry. We were on the same page. We were like, this is going to be our year. Matter of fact, February of 2020, Jeff Harry and I were in Melbourne, Australia. We had a talk that we did together called "Dealing with A-Holes at Work Using Play." And it was all about how to essentially deal with toxic masculinity and stuff like that in the workplace. And it was very interactive, and it used some playful things like improv. And we were at this conference called the Pause Fest, and we were doing this workshop. And we again, it was just like how it was in 2018. We're on cloud nine, like, wow, this is going to be a great year. Like a few weeks after we get back, everything shuts down. And I was like, wow, I have to start over again. However, what I realized is I have all these skills that I've had up to this point. I just needed to adapt a new medium. And then just like, again, for me, I feel like the ongoing sort of theme is play. And so what was play for me back in, March, April, May, and June of 2020 was doing these free improv, and laughter yoga workshops on Zoom. It was like, hey, pay what you can. I was very naive thinking that this would be all over in a few weeks. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it every week. This is what we're going to do. Here we go. And I got a chance to do some amazing collaboration with some awesome people. And I burnt myself out. I'm not going to, by June, I was like spent. I was like, what happened? And so you're probably wondering, like, weren't you living with your family? Yeah, we were living with my parents still. 2020 was the year when we had planned to move out because of the pandemic, again thinking that it was going to be a short-lived thing. Me, my wife, and my son, we went from San Diego to LA to stay with my wife's family because it was just her mom and stepdad, and they were a bit older, and we were like, hey, we're going to support them so that they don't have to go out. That was in April, and in June, we were like, wow, what's going on? But then by then, I'm starting to get paid doing some of these virtual things. Good thing for the marketing stuff, I was doing, again, more of that. That helped. But then we moved.
It sounds also that, so that time, like I thought back at those first like 3-4 months after March 2020. And I remember the freedom of that time because we were all so self-focused that no one was looking at what I was doing closely. No one was criticizing what I was doing. If I failed, nobody really noticed. Like I try to also hold on to that sense of possibility because it was just a very unique moment. And I was one of the people, and sounds like you were too, who like put the foot on the gas and just tried things. And definitely there were other people who were like, oh, it's a good time to take a 6-month sabbatical. And when I come back, it'll all be over. They showed up in September with no skills in the virtual space, and that was their downfall. But I feel like you did a lot and maybe burnt yourself out a little bit. I'm still hosting something weekly that I started March 13th, 2020. But it gave you the skills to figure out how to present your content in this new medium so that by June you were getting paid. I mean, that's a success story. That's a very short turnaround time to shift into this new format and for people to trust that that's possible. And that, of course, you were moving. I mean, it's just so many things going on in the middle of all this. I'm going to ask you in a minute a question about kind of where we're going next with this, because this is such a good conversation. And I'm kind of curious what comes next. But before we get to that, we're going to have a quick commercial break. All right. So what I want to know as we're winding this up is a year from now, when you and I are getting together, I know that I see you all the time, like a couple times a month, but I'm going to be like, hey, Gary, a year ago, I interviewed you. What are we going to be celebrating a year from now? What are we going to be toasting that's coming up? What are you most looking forward to in the year ahead?
Yeah, for the first time in a long time, I feel like I have more of my act together. Like, I've been playing with all these little things, and I feel like I have more structure. And so, what I am excited to celebrate in a year from now is consistency of to say, hey, look, I put these things out in the world, and I am doing more of that on a consistent basis. And we had talked about this too, in our group, of one of the things that, um like, when I was in quote unquote survival mode, is like, am I going to get paid? Am I going to get, like, am I going to get booked and stuff like that? And I'm feeling very, confident in saying that, like, lately, it's been very consistent, and I want to get to the place where I'm not thinking about that, because I'm confident in my ability to delight and create meaningful experiences where that's just not a thing. And so I'm, celebrating the fact is like, oh wow, I haven't worried about bookings or anything, because yeah, it's good.
That's awesome. I can't wait to celebrate that and all your milestones up until that point when you reach that level of consistency. Because every entrepreneur, a business means you sold something. A successful business means you know where the next sale's coming from. Like, that consistency is so important. So how can people find you and follow your work?
Yeah. If you're listening to this, watching this, and you're like, wow, this is really, really interesting. I wanna chat with this dude. You can find me on LinkedIn. Look me up, Gary Ware. You can go to my website, breakthroughplay.com. On the social space, I pretty much play in LinkedIn and Instagram. Those are my playgrounds. So yeah, that's where we are. Hit me up, ask me a question. I'm happy to chat.
We're going to put all those links in the show notes at ontheschmooze.com. Gary, thank you so much for joining us. This has been such a fun conversation.
Robbie, thank you so much. Yeah, very therapeutic. You're a great host, by the way.
Thank you.